Welcome to this deep dive into the life of one of the most infamous figures in criminal history, Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker. For over a year, Ramirez terrorized the state of California, with a crime spree that left the public in a state of constant fear. In this video, we will journey through his childhood, his descent into crime, his reign of terror, and the eventual end of his spree. Prepare yourself as we explore the twisted mind behind one of America's darkest chapters. Richard Ramirez was born on February 29, 1960, in El Paso, Texas. The youngest of 5 children in a working-class Mexican-American family, Richard's childhood was troubled, largely due to the violent behavior of his father, Julian, who was known for his explosive temper. This created a tense and fearful environment for young Richard, which had a lasting impact on his psyche. Miguel Ramirez, a Vietnam War veteran. Miguel shared disturbing stories and photos from his time in the war, often detailing the violent acts he had committed. For Richard, these stories sparked a fascination with violence and death. At just 13 years old, Richard witnessed his cousin shoot his wife during an argument. This traumatic experience marked a significant turning point in his life. From this moment, Richard's behavior began to change. He became increasingly withdrawn, spending more time in isolation, experimenting with drugs, and showing signs of aggression. Over the next few years, his criminal behavior escalated from petty theft and burglary to more serious crimes as his dark path began to take shape. In his teenage years, Richard's criminal activity began to escalate. By the age of 18, he had dropped out of school, left his home in El Paso, and moved to California. In Los Angeles, he began committing burglaries to support his drug habit. However, these burglaries were only a prelude to the violent acts that were to come. During this time, Richard also developed an interest in the occult and Satanism. His fascination with these dark topics became more than just a rebellious phase, it became a core part of his identity. Richard believed that he was destined to spread fear and chaos, and he saw violence as the way to achieve that. This belief would drive his actions in the years to come. On June 28, 1984, Richard Ramirez committed his first known murder. His victim was 79-year-old Jenny Vinco, a resident of Los Angeles. Ramirez broke into her apartment in the middle of the night and, after a struggle, took her life in a brutal attack. This marked the beginning of a series of violent crimes that would later make him one of the most feared individuals in California. Over the next year, Ramirez's crimes escalated both in frequency and intensity. He didn't follow a clear pattern or target specific types of victims. His attacks were seemingly random, which made it incredibly difficult for law enforcement to predict his next move. He would break into homes, often in the middle of the night, attacking anyone he found inside. His victims ranged from young children to the elderly, with no clear motive other than the desire to inflict harm. By early 1985, Richard Ramirez had become a full-fledged serial killer. His method was simple but terrifying. He would enter homes through unlocked windows or doors, often attacking his victims while they slept. The brutality of his crimes, combined with the randomness of his attacks, left the public in a constant state of fear. People began taking extra precautions, installing new locks, reinforcing windows, and sleeping with weapons nearby. Ramirez's crimes were not limited to a specific type of violence. He used a variety of methods to terrorize his victims, from physical assaults to psychological torment. In some instances, he demanded that his victims swear to Satan before he harmed them, solidifying his reputation as someone who believed he was carrying out a larger, dark purpose. As his crime spree continued, the media began referring to him as the Night Stalker, a name that would stick and become infamous across the country. The public's fear was heightened by the media coverage, which detailed the terrifying nature of the crimes and the fact that the killer was still at large. Many of Ramirez's attacks are infamous, not only for their brutality but for the courage of the survivors who managed to escape. One such case was the attack on Bill Carnes and Inez Erickson in August 1985. Ramirez broke into their home, fatally shooting Carnes and attacking Erickson. Despite her injuries, Erickson survived and provided a detailed description of her attacker, which would later prove crucial to identifying Ramirez. Another attack that shocked the public occurred on May 29, 1985, when Ramirez broke into the home of Leila and Max Needing. He shot both victims in the head, leaving yet another bloody crime scene behind. The randomness of these attacks added to the fear, as there was no way to predict where or when he would strike next. By mid-1985, law enforcement had begun to piece together a clearer picture of who the Night Stalker might be. Eyewitness accounts, fingerprints, and a shoe print found at multiple crime scenes all pointed toward Richard Ramirez. On August 30, 1985, Ramirez returned to Los Angeles after a trip to Arizona. By this time, his face was all over the news, and the police had launched a full-scale manhunt to capture him. In a twist of fate, Ramirez's downfall came at the hands of the public. After being recognized by a group of citizens in East Los Angeles, Ramirez was chased down and apprehended. The crowd detained him until the police arrived, ending his reign of terror. The Night Stalker had finally been captured. Richard Ramirez's trial began in 1988 and quickly became one of the most high-profile cases in American history. The media closely followed every development, as Ramirez faced charges for 13 counts of murder, 5 counts of attempted murder, and numerous counts of sexual assault and burglary. The trial was notable not only for the severity of the crimes, but also for Ramirez's behavior in court. Throughout the trial, Ramirez showed little remorse. In fact, he often appeared to relish the attention. At one point, he even flashed a pentagram at the cameras and shouted "Hail Satan" during court proceedings. His behavior only added to the aura of fear and darkness that surrounded his case. After a long and emotional trial, Ramirez was found guilty of all charges. On November 7, 1989, he was sentenced to death. However, despite being sentenced to die in the gas chamber, Ramirez would remain on death row for more than 2 decades. Ramirez spent the rest of his life on death row at San Quentin State Prison. During this time, he became something of a dark celebrity. He received fan mail from people who were fascinated by his case, and in 1996 he even married one of his admirers, Doreen Lai-Oi, while still behind bars. Despite his notoriety, Ramirez remained defiant until the end. Richard Ramirez died on June 7, 2013, from complications related to B-cell lymphoma, a type of cancer. He was 53 years old. Although he spent more than 2 decades on death row, he never faced execution. The legacy of the Night Stalker lives on, not only through the impact he had on his victims and their families, but also in popular culture. Richard Ramirez's name has become synonymous with fear, terror, and evil. His case remains one of the most infamous in American criminal history, a reminder of the darkness that can reside within individuals. Richard Ramirez's story is one that continues to captivate the public. His actions shocked the nation and left an indelible mark on the criminal justice system. As we reflect on his life and crimes, we are reminded of the importance of vigilance, the resilience of survivors, and the ultimate triumph of justice. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the life of Richard Ramirez. The Night Stalker. If you found this video informative, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime content. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.